Today, we are diving into one of the wildest and, frankly, most bizarre books in the entire Bible, the Book of Daniel. It's a story that kicks off with these amazing hero tales, and then, well, it spirals into these terrifying cosmic nightmares. And right away, that brings us to the central puzzle of the whole book. If you've ever tried to read it, you've probably thought this exact same thing. It feels like it's been split right down the middle. I mean, how do you get from a guy surviving a lion's den to a nightmarish vision of some multi-headed beast in the same story? Okay, let's get into it. I mean, the split is just super clear. The first half, chapters 1 through 6, we're hanging out in the royal courts of Babylon. The vibe is heroic, almost like an ancient superhero movie. Daniel is this wise, super confident guy who always comes out on top. But then, boom, the second half hits and the setting completely changes to this terrifying, cosmic space. The tone becomes chaotic and honestly pretty scary. And Daniel himself, he goes from this calm, cool courtier to a terrified visionary who is just completely overwhelmed by what he's seen. It's this wild personality shift. So what on earth happened? Well, there's this really compelling theory that says to understand this crazy shift, we need to see the first half of the book not just as stories, but as a kind of psychological shield, a defense mechanism that was built to handle a reality that was just too painful to face head-on. And it all starts with this idea of collective trauma. You gotta remember, the book kicks off with the fall of Jerusalem and the Jewish people being exiled to Babylon. Now, this wasn't just losing a war. It was a devastating, traumatic event for an entire culture. We're talking about war, the destruction of their sacred temple, and being forcibly dragged from their homes. That leaves a deep, shared wound. And this quote from scholar Stuart Gable, man, it just nails it. He says, these early chapters create a fantasized and grandiose reversal of fortune. In other words, these stories basically flip reality on its head. For a people who were totally conquered and powerless, these stories were a fantasy where they were the ones who were actually powerful, wise, and ultimately proven right. And you see this fantasy play out over and over again. The captured Daniel, he just happens to be 10 times better than all the king's own advisors. His friends get thrown into a fiery furnace and survive so miraculously that the king himself converts on the spot. Daniel walks out of a den of hungry lions without a scratch. And again, the most powerful kings on the planet are humbled and have to admit that Daniel's God is the real deal. See, these aren't just miracle stories. They're power fantasies for the powerless. But here's the thing about shields, right? They can only take so much punishment. And eventually, this psychological shield, built out of these heroic stories, it just shatters. Because eventually, the weight of generations of trauma, of suffering, and continued oppression, it just got to be too much. This defensive fantasy, as powerful as it was, just couldn't hold back reality forever. And you can see this break, this shatter, so clearly in Daniel himself. In chapter 6, the very last of the hero stories, he's described as having an excellent spirit. But you flip the page to chapter 7, the very first vision, and he says, "My thoughts greatly terrified me." Poof, the confident courtier, gone. And in his place is this guy who's just completely haunted by what he's seeing. And this isn't just in his head, it's a full-body experience. After another one of these visions, Daniel literally says, "I was overcome and lay sick for some days." The trauma isn't being held back anymore. It's bursting out, and it's making him physically ill. So here's the big reveal, right? The bizarre, chaotic, terrifying visions in the second half of the book, that's the eruption of all that suppressed collective trauma. The roaring beasts, the cosmic wars, the scary figures, this is what centuries of pain and fear and anxiety look like when they finally smash through that psychological shield. But, and this is so important, out of all this chaos, something brand new starts to form. Once the old way of coping fails, a new, more radical kind of hope has to be forged, right there in the ashes of all that despair. Think about it. When you've suffered for so long that any hope for justice in this world seems totally impossible, well, you start looking for justice somewhere else. This gave rise to a whole new way of seeing the world, a new spiritual technology we now call apocalypticism. It's a worldview that is born from crisis. And this apocalyptic way of thinking has a few key ingredients. It's all about revealing heavenly secrets through these weird symbolic visions, exactly what Daniel starts seeing. You often have angels showing up to interpret what the heck is going on. The world gets reframed as this epic cosmic struggle between good and evil. And here's the biggest part. It promises that in the end, God himself is going to step in, fix everything, and make sure the good guys win. It's the ultimate hope for victory when victory on earth feels completely out of reach. And you know what's crazy? These nightmares that Daniel had, this whole new apocalyptic framework, they didn't just stay in his book. Oh no, they ended up shaping religious thought for thousands of years to come. I mean, Daniel's visions literally became the blueprint for the final book of the New Testament, the book of Revelation. You can't miss the echoes. Daniel sees 4 beasts rise from the sea. Revelation has a composite beast rise from the sea. Daniel sees the Ancient of Days on a throne of judgment. Revelation has the great white throne of judgment. And Daniel's mysterious figure, one like a son of man, becomes a major title for Christ. Basically, Daniel invented the language, the whole visual library of the apocalypse. As Pastor Jason Elder says, Revelation is not a new plan. It's the unfolding of the same promises God gave through the prophets. And Daniel, he's the crucial link in that chain. He provides the imagery and the framework that makes the whole story of Revelation possible. So when you look at it this way, the book of Daniel isn't some messy, stitched-together text at all. It's one psychologically powerful story. It's this incredibly human journey about a people processing immense trauma, moving from fantasy and denial to a painful clash with reality, and in the end forging a radical new kind of hope that would echo through history. And that kind of leaves us with a big question, doesn't it? The story of Daniel is about a community's entire imagination being reshaped by crisis. So, what about ours? In our own crazy, uncertain times, how are our collective hopes for the future being forged right now? What new stories are we starting to tell ourselves to make sense of it all?